Good morning, everyone. We've just heard from an artist who has spoken passionately about, creating work, hyperreal, the tensions between criticality and enthusiasm, the tensions between the corporates and the individual. Actually, on this panel, we represent institutions. There was a question earlier, what is the cultural institution to do in the midst of all this? And I think our panel here is here to really share with all the messy identity forming. And I think communities are messy. They're constantly evolving. What we understand of communities today are not just formed by values, ethnicity, religion, space, place. They could be invisible behind your computers, sharing common interests, not sharing any demographic similarities at all. And in the midst of that, I think cultural institutions have always tried to make sense of it. We have curators who, try to put all that messiness together in a single exhibition. We have archivists who, try to put that in a way that can be easily searchable. Narratives such as the Hong Kong Memory Project that people can access. So in some ways, institutions always try to tell singular narratives, but I think we also have examples of how that singular perspective is also being challenged. Not just by digital technologies, but really also by the communities around those institutions. So to start us off, I think we have Eric. Eric started his career as a lawyer, and his passion for both the past and putting that all together has brought him to the position of Director of the National Archives for several years now. Eric's going to talk about how the endeavors of the archives, the National Archives, in putting a lot of content that wasn't born digital into a space that can be digital, and how to make sense of that, to present it, and to make that accessible, right? So Eric, to you.
Okay, good morning all. Not sure how many of you here count yourself as archivists, but I suspect that what I would share today would apply to anyone who works for a memory institution, as they call it nowadays. I start with a challenge as such from Terry Cook, a Canadian archivist of some note, who especially the last few years has been championing this idea of a community archives, participatory archives, and challenging the norms and the thinkings of the archival community. And so here we start off with question of whether the archivist wants to end up being fossils floating in stagnant water of irrelevancy. And I'll come back to this theme again of water in my response to this as such, but as we have heard, even in the keynote speech, there are many complex issues and nothing is as straightforward as it seems sometimes. This again is from Terry Cook, where he outlines the archival thinking over the years, starting with the very hard-nosed Sir Hilary Jenkinson, for whom archiving meant you kept whatever naturally survived from the institution, organization, government, etc. And the archivist really did not play a role there. It was more a preservation role, if you will, some organization, of course. But I think the way it's looked at nowadays is that the narrative would be that of the higher-ups in the institution, so to speak, that is what survives, and that was what was archived. At the next stage, it was realized when it came to Schellenberg, there was just too much material. Right? So by the 1930s, there was just too much material and selection had to be done. And so archivists had to start to throw away things. And the challenge there was to do a selection, to do appraisal. But in this new era, if you will, of archiving, the archivists started to go towards memory, started to not just keep the things that belong to the prominent people, but to also keep the voices of the common man, so to speak. Then in the 1970s and into the 2000s, Many archives, in fact, started because they came out of revolutions, they came out of situations of war and so on, and they kept the stories of injustices, of human rights abuses and so on. And the archivist started to become a professional, started to think about what are the standards that ought to apply, what are the best practices. And in that era, if you will, lots of standards were created. The archivist started to see himself as a leader in the field. And then we come to the digital, where things start to change. People, anyone can be an archivist, so to speak, create a website, put it up, share things. And there's a lot more contested narratives, if you will, if I can use the language of historians, and how people remember things and what things mean to different people. So the Cook, archivists like Cook, archivists like Eric Kettler from Netherlands, and many others have begun to champion this idea that archivists cannot just sit in their ivory towers, so to speak, although I can assure you I don't sit in one. And they need to really get out there, hear what the people are interested in, and not just keep the so-called heritage items, but also to keep how people react to them, how people participate in them, how people remember the things that are in the archives. That movement, if you will, has touched us in Singapore as well. And the biggest example of that would be in the case of the Bukit Brown Cemetery. For those, those from Singapore would know this case, if you will, where a historical cemetery as such, where many prominent pioneers and so on, especially of the Chinese community, but there are other races represented there as well. This cemetery will make way for potentially housing in future, for roads and so on. And the community that is, a community started to grow up organically around this project. And they started to collect their own memories. They created their own websites. They took their own photographs. They started to connect people to the site itself. They started to take pictures of their own. And a rich archives started to be built up. And we have two local researchers who have dubbed them docutivists, and who have pushed the notion that this participatory archives is as important to keep as all the so-called treasures in the National Archives, and that the memories of the people who have participated in this and the knowledge that they have put together ought to be archived as well. At the National Archives, I can say that when they had their first exhibition at the National Library building, we contributed as much as we could. For example, this map here of aerial photograph of the area, where they could actually pinpoint the key burial sites and cemeteries which had special significance. We will also, in the future, be taking some of this in as archives that the National Archives of Singapore will keep in the long term. So that I want to, at this point, just share a little bit about what it is that we have done in the recent past. So that map that the Bukit Brown docutivists used for their exhibition, for example, comes from a collection of over about 60,000 maps and aerial photographs. And in the last 2 years, we have put up the high-resolution ones. Previously, if you had gone in, you had seen the low-resolution pictures. There was a magnifying glass there. You clicked. Every time you magnified it, it looked worse, right? So such are the challenges of technology. So there are many false starts sometimes. With the best of intentions, someone put a magnifying glass there, but did not put the high resolution maps up. So we have, I think it was in May this year, finally managed to put up all the high res. So if you go into Archives Online now, you have this nice widget where you can play around, turn the maps around and so on. And thus far, some people have used these maps and overlaid them with modern maps, overlaid them with photographs, pictures of things they remember of the sites and locations. We have also aggressively digitized our oral history collection. Not everybody knows of this, but again, go into Archives Online, go and search. I have listed there, you will see certain prominent names, if you will, that will be top of mind recall for those in the heritage industries. But you also have voices of the man in the street, those that experienced Singapore and could tell stories of Singapore, not from that perspective of policymaker, but from the perspective of a Singaporean who has lived life here and experienced it from a certain perspective. And here you have the voice of Rashida Zali, who was born in the Botanic Gardens in the 1930s, lived there most of her life, and worked there till her retirement. And with technology as well, we have been able to automatically pull out suggestions. So if you do a keyword search, for example, you don't just get the hit that you want, you also get suggested related topics or related oral histories that then enriches and helps in the discovery of material that is useful to the exhibition, the publication, whatever it is that the researcher seeks to do. I will also share that with the digitizing all the tapes and open reel tapes that we had, we have been able to overlay this with voice-to-text transcription. Transcription, for those who practice oral history, you'll know that it is extremely challenging. 1 hour of oral history can take up to 10 hours to transcribe. But with voice-to-text, can do it automatically. It is not perfect, especially since the technology does not fully understand the nuances of how Singaporeans speak. We're trying to train the technology, but what we have seen thus far in the year or so that we have applied this technology is that you're getting access has gone up by 82%, because people are finding a lot more through the voice-to-text that allows them to quickly search through the wealth of oral histories that we have. We have also aggressively digitized our audiovisual collection. So you have National Day rally speeches, you have home movies, you have music here. If you go there, again on Archives Online, you'll find music that dates back as far as 1903. There are, of course, copyright challenges in putting things online. So to the extent possible, we put it online. But our copyright laws allow us to at least facilitate access in the reading rooms. So that's the worst case scenario, but we attempt to put as much as possible online. We have also managed to digitize, well, this is a project that started last year, papers presented to Parliament. These are papers that have been put before our legislative assemblies or parliaments over the years. We are going to digitize it going all the way back to 1955 as an extremely rich resource for researchers, where previously, again, these were found only in the Parliament's library and some of it in the National Library. But again, impossible to search as such. So as we digitize, we are able to apply OCR over it as well, optical character recognition, so that immediately all this becomes searchable. And within about 1.5 years, we would have finished the project, and you would have everything going back to 1955 available for research. We have also in the last year started to put government files online. So if you go and search out policy history at Archives Online, you will find a growing list of topics where we will actually put open access files online. And there'll be a lot more files that will be available, not online, but immediately for immediate access at the Archives Reading Room. What does all this translate to? In 2012 or so, when we checked on our page views on our website, it was at about 20,000 page views a month. And we were reasonably happy as far as websites go for government websites. But with a little bit of tweaking of technology, with permanent URLs and all that, we are hitting now in excess of 500,000 page views a month. So technology has allowed us to reach out. And what's heartening as well is that when we are not able to pinpoint exactly who's looking at these sites, but about 75% is coming from Singapore. Somebody is researching within Singapore. Where does all this research go to? Just very quickly to say that you see rising numbers here of use of the archives. Where this one is an example of people mashing things up at the Esplanade a couple of years back, where there was an SSO concert, Singapore Symphony Orchestra, and there was this archival footages and all that running as the music played. So this is what we are driving at. I think at the end of the day, as Yvonne said, our primary aim is to make things easily searchable. Do we want to work closely with communities? Absolutely yes. We need to understand them and know what's important to keep when we do that selection. But this is what is most heartening. Of course, last year was our 50th, Singapore's 50th as such. But what I can tell you that 2016 numbers don't look bad. It has not seen a sudden dip, so that's very encouraging as well. I would like to share this. This is the Citizen Archivist project that we launched about a year and a half ago. It started from, I'm a fairly new archivist, so to speak. I had to write an article once, and I was trying to use the straight settlement records from the 1800s. And it took me 45 minutes to begin to acclimatize and understand and begin to read the text. And we have 1 million pages of this, and it's not very often used as such because it's just so challenging to get into. And in terms of books and authors that have transcribed these, there are a few volumes out there of very selected pieces. But we tried this, we put it all online. And what has been wonderful is that every night or every day, about 30 to 40 pages are transcribed every day. So as you see here, this is the most beautiful thing, green. This entire Raffles volume is done. Of course, I do have friends who have come up to me, historians and others who have said, hey, is this 100% accurate? What I say to them is that, look, previously it was totally unsearchable. What I can assure you is that it is at least 90+% accurate. And what's wonderful is that if you see the contributors here, sometimes you will see 4 or 5 names. People are coming in, they're correcting each other. Some can read the T's better and some can read the S's better. And together, they're really building this very rich resource. So when previously you could not do a keyword search at all, about 1 year ago, now if I search tiger, I get 25 hits. I hope that by next year, I search tiger again, I will get 50 hits, right? So it is opening up this manuscript, this resource that has been locked up, forgotten history, if you will. We are becoming more adventurous. We are putting other things online in Citizen Archivist portal. We just did this, I can't remember, about 2 months ago, 1.5 months ago. And it's wonderful. We put up about 200 odd lyric sheets up there. In the 1.5 months, 74 or so have been completed. Again, this makes this entire resource findable and searchable for anyone. So, in the 2 minutes that I have, I suppose, to sum up, if you will, the archives has tried to digitize as much as possible, to put as much of its content online. Our desire and our hope is that people will come and use the archives. I mean, I give you an example. Just yesterday, I saw, for those in Singapore, you know, Mothership, right? So someone wrote a piece in Mothership, and I used about 50 photographs, I think, all right, give or take some, from the National Archives website. I mean, he basically just cut and paste into his article. Will we sue him for breach of the use of archives online? Answer, no. It's great that they are using the resource as such, and using it to enrich their research, enrich the work that they're doing, enrich the presentations of culture and heritage in Singapore. So, just as a general question, what kind of archivist then do you want? Going back to what Terry Cook set out in terms of the different paradigms. Do you want somebody who's the guardian? Do you want a historian? Somebody who will focus on what the historians want, primarily from an academic point of view? Do you want someone who has an eye towards justice and what society needs? Or do you want someone who's a collaborator? As Terry Cook shared, I think the answer is not so much that these are cut and dried paradigms, but the emphasis is changing. And in order for the National Archives to be relevant, we need to understand that as well, and we need to connect better with the communities out there. I always say that we don't just take in the government records, we also work with communities, and we should share our expertise. But at the end of the day, there's one challenging thing. If I can just skip to this. So this again is that article from the Bukit Brown. And what they have said here is that given the size and diversity of users, at worst, the whole process could end up chaotic and costly. Costly because at the end of the day, it's probably an institution like the National Archives that has the capacity and capability to ensure that certain things are kept in the long term. So I think that part of our task would be to work with communities and make sure that even if you cannot keep everything that they have put together, that at least a good representative set is kept for the long term, for posterity. And we want to work towards this, where we don't want to be dead in the water, but we want to work with stakeholders, communities, and so on, in order to, as put here nicely, and I like this very much, that the marker buoys, the trail signs, the traces, I think that some archivists, the term that some archivists use, of life lived by people, is kept, whether in the National Archives or any other archives or memory institution in Singapore. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Eric. As much as a National Archives have used digital means in a way really to open up its access to its collection, and I think also for new communities to be able to enter that conversation. I think the next presenter, Patrick. Patrick is a historian by training, I guess, and he's worked with the Hong Kong University, or rather the Hong Kong Institute for Social Sciences and Humanities. And one of the big projects that he's been involved in, and he's going to share more about, is about the Hong Kong Memory Project. I think some in the audience will be familiar with the Singapore Memory Project. And I think, I wouldn't say it's in contrast to the National Archives, but employing fairly similar strategies of, collecting memories from as wide a pool as possible. I think the Hong Kong Memory Project will show us how collection of memories, not just by a national institution, but from a more ground-up process, also surfaces new tensions. And I think what Patrick's going to show us, the evolution of that project, will probably show us the kinds of tensions that exist between an institution that perhaps sponsored the project, the diversity of views that came up from it, the subjectivity of what makes someone's history and what makes a community's history, much less a nation's history, that starts to get a lot more complex. And perhaps for those of us in the cultural sector, that's where it starts getting more interesting. So over to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yes, it's a good thing as a second presenter after Dr. Chin's, because some of the assumptions he talked about actually they are the problems of the Hong Kong Memory Project. When we start the project in 2006, I'm here to present projects from Hong Kong. These projects start from 2006 by the government, because the government, Hong Kong SAR government, they are impressed by the UNESCO's World of the Memory program very much. So they would like to start a similar project in Hong Kong, but they don't know how to do it. So the government talked to the university and invited the university to build the first layer of content for the project. And that's why they approached the university, and I am in the research team. So when I joined the team, the project is just starting with just simple ideas how we can preserve and collect the memories of Hong Kong peoples and present it to the public. Well, here I would like to say from the perspective of a content producer, because when we create a website, we are picking up a role to upload content to the website. And at the same time, these roles is mixed with archivists or museum workers, because we are at the same time preserve something and exhibit something for the wider audience. So these roles I would see as a kind of cultural worker or a cultural producer, making some contents available on the website. To give a preliminary ideas of what this project is about, it is basically a website, online depository for preserving archive materials from text, images, videos to oral history records or audio records. At the same time, it is an exhibition space, because we believe that some contents could be exhibited online, just like a museum exhibit an exhibition. So this is the front page of the website. I already introduced the background. So the project started in 2006. I was with the project until 2014, when the first layer of content complete. We hand over the whole project to the Hong Kong government. And nowadays the project was maintained and further developed by the central libraries of Hong Kong government. I go back earlier to the puzzling questions when I joined the team in 2006. There's a problem is how to start and where to start, because we are not just like other startup of a new museum. Usually, museum or archive will start with endowments of collections. For example, they would acquire or they have already built on some existing archives or materials. The website doesn't have anything. We have as I said, just some preliminary ideas, how to start and where to start. So we use a method, because the research team has strong networks with the community professionals or with the academic circle. We know that there are a lot of researchers, no matter they are from academic field or not. They have a lot of interested topics, and they would collect materials for the topics under study, and they would create notes, research papers, or they would write up something, what we call narratives, or they would collect images, photos, or different types of materials to support that research topic. And that probably form a good base for starting a Hong Kong Memory project with some sort of topics which can reflect the diversity or some aspects of Hong Kong history. And that's why you see there are 4 pockets here. We base on these ideas to ask people, in particular the researchers or the professionals, whether they would like to form some ideas or topics for the Hong Kong Memory. And we invite them to create a research project on this part. But there is one critical issue we are asking ourselves. When we collect the materials, what is our role to present those things to the public? This is a simple images, artwork by an artist in the 1930s. He was commissioned by a company to make advertisement. If there is no additional information attached on these images, I would believe that ordinary user or visitors, when they receive this image, maybe they will be attracted by the aesthetic outlook or feel or some drawing, or maybe attracted by the keywords or phrases in the advertisement. That is not the way we want to do it or just focusing on it. We believe that as a website preserving something or display something to the public, we have to some sort of knowledge. We have to provide more what I call contextual information with these images. For example, the history, the social backgrounds, who created, for what purpose they created. All that sort of things I call contextual information. And nowadays, people work in the field will be familiar with a background, captions, or whatever we call it. The most critical point is that we are not just collect things and put it on website. We are creating something, create a field of knowledge. And we believe that, as Dr. Chin said, that we are guardians of knowledge. We are guardians of some secret message or valuable history preserved in these single images item. And if we add on that sort of knowledge, we can build up a knowledge tree, so and so. I think this sort of reasoning is the early phases of Hong Kong Memory Project teams. Because of this thinking, we develop project with very centralized or top-down approach. We define the topic, we define the scope, we consider which topic is more meaningful than others, what are the relevant information should be contained in the archives, in the collections. If you go through our website, you will find that there are 2 types of presentation. One is collections. What means collection is a more structured knowledge field about a historical theme or about historical topic. Like this one, Hong Kong Product Exhibition is a kind of product show which appeared first in 1930s. Even today, every year, the manufacturing industries or the companies will hold a product expo in Hong Kong. We trace the history We define the scope, collect the materials for it, and then we saw it. There's a structure when you go into the website, just like we go into a directory and see there are background parts, there are images part, there are different themes about these exhibitions. Well, this sort of doing, I think, is a kind of mentality, as I say, just like a researcher doing a research, have a very defined focus and then collect things to support your ideas. I call this the researcher-centered approach. This approach affects the Hong Kong Memory team very much. In the early phases, we have a lot of work done by this approach. No matter they are talking about entertainment, themes, about post-war industries, about cemeteries, about traditional festivals. Even though the appearance, because of the participation of different types of designers, they have different outlooks, they have different fields, but generally we share the similar methodologies. We are defining a knowledge fields and believe that in the materials there are something valuables worth to present. But in the middle, up to the middle stages, when we try to capture the people's voice, record the people's experience, there is a new set of questions to the research teams. Just like people talk to another guy, when I ask you to recall your childhood or recall your past living experience, in your response, sometimes it's more than facts and information. There are always emotion, perception, judgments from your perspective. So if we just treat this dialogue as a simple record, as a simple data, and impose my view, a researcher views on it, categorize it under a thematic category called housing, living experience. The emotion or the subjective feelings or the experience contained in the audio records, in the conversations, would disappear at all. So we suddenly come up with these issues and try to resolve it. How we can do something in a way to balance researchers' interests. We still have a wish to collect things on, like this example. We want to study a place called Yau Ma Tei, one small old area in the Kowloon side of Hong Kong. But at the same time, we want to keep or try to display the experience of peoples, because we, based on a lot of oral history interviews, we collect a lot of oral records. If we impose a structure on it, sometimes it will get lost of the experience. That's why if you go to the website, you will find that there is no places or no single page to tell you what means Yau Ma Tei, the place. Or there is no attempt to summarize what are these people saying. We just build in different characters. You can follow the characters' experience and see what you see about the Yau Ma Tei place. Well, some will go into the memories of people who place emphasis on the seashore, on the fishing ships, because they form up this very distinctive livelihood at that time. Some would remember the playground, the urban street around the Yau Ma Tei area, because when he went to school, he will follow the routes every day, and that was the most impressed memories about him. We try to base on others people's memory and let the audience think about in the 50s to 70s, what is the feeling of these places? I think it is one for the research team who were constrained by the researcher mindset. They have to break themselves out and then try to accept a new perspective, how other people's perspective would become the dominant theme when we are making the presentation. We do a few more exercise based on this thinking. I think that is one way to try to balance what I say the researcher-centered approach. I call it a relational approach because the researchers still have a role to raise questions, to collect people, ideas, or even to identify who are the most important interviewees to be interviewed. They still have a role to it, but when they collect the things back and then try to create the content, the interviewees or the participants, their experience and perception and judgment would be much more important than the interests of the researchers. Sometimes we have to pay respect to how they define the importance of this village or how they define the interest of this place. We try to restore their perspectives through exhibitions and through some other presentations. That is the most rewarding part, I think, because we are, as a person involved in these projects more than 7 years, up to 2014, I witnessed these changes of approach and some of the debates in the research team. And at the same time, the team are more getting aware of the environment is more decentralized. They're decentralized not only in the sense that the archive, the roles of archivists, the roles of museum workers, we are just part of the picture, no matter how we define or values ourselves. Of course, we still keep the roles of as knowledge gardeners, or we still believe that there are some objective truth, secrets, or important message contained in the documents. But that is just one perspective in the picture. At the same time, we have more perspective. We need to let them presentable to the public. And I believe that there are many other ways and technologies help the community to raise the voice and present what they are interested in the website. Not only in the website, in different types of digital means. That's my summary of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. And I would like to introduce Linda. Linda comes from the Rijksmuseum. And I think what the museum has done over many years of opening up its collection and really receiving different perspectives from its visitors and accessing that digital collection and actually displaying their own selection of that takes what many of the tensions that Patrick mentioned to one extreme. I think the museum has fully embraced the multiple perspective that every visitor can, or every user can have. So without further ado, Linda.
Thank you, Van, and thank you, Cultural Academy, for inviting the Rijksmuseum to this great conference. I would like to start with a short video. this flash mob was made by one of our partners, one of our sponsors, ING, right before the reopening of the Rijksmuseum. I'm not sure if you know, but the Rijksmuseum has been under construction for almost 10 years. And we were facing a few problems back then, and we need to restore some image and our reputation. And one of our biggest problems at the time was that people, and especially the Dutch people, didn't feel connected with us, and they thought we were distant. And half of the Dutch people we conducted the research did not know what was our most important painting, the Night Watch. So we had a few problems because we're the National Museum of the Netherlands, and this flash mob helped us to give us our heroes back. And this flash mob, we were not sure before we launched it if it would be a success. It was a very quick initiative. It was kind of an experiment. It was a very short production with very little means. It was made, and it turned out to be a huge success. It's viewed on YouTube for over 10 million times in a few months. So it was a very important thing, and it was an eye-opener to us that what the people expect of us could be something completely different than what we would have thought of as a museum before. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our museum and about our efforts to put our collection online to get people connected. But I wanted to give you this example first. We want to be the Museum of the Netherlands, and here you see a picture of a gallery of honor. We have a large collection of paintings, 17th century paintings of the Golden Age, and we are the National Museum of the Netherlands. We're a state museum, but we didn't have that feeling with the Dutch people. 75% of our visitors came from abroad. Only 25% was from the Netherlands, which is a bit of a shame and a bit difficult if you're the National Museum. So we had to change something, and we didn't know to do what. The fact that we were under construction didn't help. And in the new museum, you see here the new building, we ordered all our objects chronologically. We have over, 1 million objects, and 8,000 objects are on display. So we had to make some choices. And at that time, we thought we don't want to disclose only in a physical way, in the physical museum, but we want to provide it and to be accessible to all online too. And that ended in a special section on our website, and we called it Rijksstudio. And the idea is that you have a studio and you can create your own set. So, but that's what we did back then. As I said, we were regarded as very traditional. You see here a picture of the opening of the museum in the 19th century. And I think most of the Dutch people thought we were back there still 3 years ago. They thought we were expensive. They thought we were distant. We couldn't connect to our audiences. So we had to change that. And here you see a screen of our website. In 2003, we launched our new website too, and we made a radical design change. We wanted to give the full podium to our collection, because our art is our gold. Our collection is the most important asset we have, and we thought, why not disclose it in the best possible way? So we made a very basic website. Only three. The upper part has been a bit away, but we have only 3 top tasks. You can go to the museum, you can explore something about the collection, or you can plan your visit. And that's an extreme choice, and it made it difficult for us, but it helped us getting the focus and get us determine what's really important in our connection with our audience. And we really needed to get their souls, hearts, and minds. So we try to do that, putting our entire collection online. So we're aiming to put 1 million objects there. We're halfway now, I guess, and it helped us engaging with new audiences. I'll explain that later. and we can do that at different ways. But here you see a picture of this collection part. It's in fact an online gallery. And you see some sets we made ourselves, but also users can make their own sets. Here you see a visual, you see the timeline. You can collect yourself the pieces of art you like. So it's kind of a database, an online catalog. And you see here some collections we made. And here is a collection made by a user. So the idea is that we're available to all and we're accessible to all, whether you are in the museum or not. So before your visit or after your visits, we're 24/7, we are there. And we think it's our duty to be available to all, because we're a public institution. And by doing this, we learned that people are engaging in our collection too. And even people who never go to the museum because they're not museum goers, because they wouldn't consider it as something to do when you're abroad, or when you're not able to come to the museum physically. So it's very interesting what we see, because we have over 300,000 Rijksstudio sets, 300,000 users who made their own collection. And what we try to do is to make it as visual as possible. In the current image culture, when everything is online, everything is on the internet, we thought we have to do something with that. So, and we rather embrace it than keep it to ourselves. So that's why we decided to disclose their images high res. At the I think it's a resolution of 4500 by 4500. You can do whatever you want with it. You can use it for your personal use, or you can do something in a professional way. It's all fine by us. So we give it away for free to all. And here you can download right away from the website. You can download your image. We wanted to make it as user-friendly as possible. And here you see it, and you can look at the detail too. And because of the high resolution, you can see every brushstroke, every craquelé detail or something. We wanted to give you the best possible experience. And no, we don't think that it will lose his aura, the object of art, because we believe that we only enable you to see more when you're in the museum sometimes, and that eventually leads to that you're attracted to us and you will be thinking of us when you're in the Netherlands. So we put the collection in high resolution online, but what we also wanted to do is to stimulate the use of the collection, not only for yourself, but also to share it. I'm not sure here. You can download your work, but you can also share it through social media. And we see a lot of people doing that. And here you see a detail. If you would like to have more information about the object, you can have more information through this button. And in different layers, you can click further. So we not only tried to serve the cultural snacker, as we call it, but also the professional or the scientist who wants to have more information. So our whole collection registration system is behind this. But we wanted to disclose it for a general audience who isn't waiting for all data. And in fact, you could say that everybody becomes a museum director, because you can very easily, with one click on the button, you can make your own collection. And you can decide whatever you think is interesting. And this woman made a collection, I'm not sure how to translate it, Bold Man or something. And it's very, very funny, because she put a picture of our former director, Wim Pijbes, in it too. But that's something we can't do as a museum. We reflect, we have to present our view of the Netherlands, what is representative in our opinion, in our professional opinion. But that doesn't need to be the same as the opinion of the regular public. Here you see a man who was interested in the left bottom part of a painting. And he called his collection Bottom Lefts. Yeah, very interesting. And we also think we attract new users. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure about your opinions and your experiences. But put a picture of a cat or a dog online, and your website visits are sky high. This is a woman who made a collection of all the cats made a studio of all the cats in our collection. I didn't know we had this many cats in our collection. So it's very funny because on the other side it helps us exploring our collection a little bit better. So we think we see more things and new things because we have a different reference and a different point of a different perspective. And this cat woman, her views don't reflect necessarily ours, but that's fine because it's her view and she likes it. And we're only glad that she is looking at our collection. Apart from collectioning, we actually want to stimulate active reuse, and that's very easy for us because the major part of our collection is copyright-free. Because most of the artists are longer dead than 70 years, so they're copyrights free. And then we thought we are only the custodian of the collection, but the collection belongs to everybody. So why not make the best of it? And here you see a tattoo which was designed by Droog Design, a design agency in the Netherlands. And here you can see how the beauty of a still life of the 17th century can be combined with something like a tattoo and has a complete new meaning. The tattoo became very popular. I would like to see another artist a small clip who worked with our collection too, and to see what you can do with our collection, giving it a relevance in the present time.
So much to lose, but here in your heart, it's here. I can wait for you now, but not forever. I was surprised by how happy I was. No, that's why it's just become down by the harbor in the dawn. It's not a stop.
So, those were over 200 works of art which has been used, and this video became very popular amongst young people too. So I'm not sure what you think of it, but we thought we were very happy with it. Another example of the reuse of our collection was made by our sponsor Heineken. Another by Droog Design again, based on the 17th century still lifes and silver pieces. This is a milk carton set production with one of our main grocery stores in the Netherlands, and we wanted to stimulate the discussions about art at the kitchen table. So this is an example of using art outside the museum. That's not digital, of course, but I wanted to give you the full picture, because you can do this through Rijksstudio, through our digital collection. And this was a partnership, but people can do it for ourselves if they want. I'm not sure if you know the reseller platform Etsy. in which people make designs and sell designs online. It's a worldwide platform. You see here playing with tradition, a makeup set based on our paintings. And here you see an example of we have a design contest, and here you see the winner of last year, the Rijksstudio award. And this is a book bracelet made based on etchings by Rembrandt. I think only over 300 etchings. And the lady, there were two, a mother and a daughter, they made a research project of it, and they transferred it into a wearable. So a wearable of la lettre. Here you see a set of marmalades and syrups based on our still lifes, and this line actually is on sale in our museum shop and in our web shop. So we put the reuse of our collection into our full extent, and people can do that themselves. And sometimes we partner up, but otherwise we can facilitate and help them produce their designs. And this is a very nice one. These are shutters these are blinds for a cooking studio. And this picture was sent to us through social media by a lady who has a cooking studio and organizes cooking classes. And she wanted to have something which was relevant for her people. So we really love it. So why was it a success, we think, this whole operation? We think that the focus we put on the collection itself, the power of the image and presenting it in the best possible way, we think that was, and the user-friendliness of our website. With one click you have the art you want to have. You don't have to pay a fee, you don't have to go through 5 forms or something. We think that helped us, making our art accessible. We think that we made a responsive website which helps us. You can enter, you can access it easily on your mobile too. So that helped us too because of the development, because of the emerging iPad at the time and now mobile. So that helped us too. And another point, and that's I think the most principal point, it's about democratization. It's art for all of us. And if we hadn't done that, without any constraints, without any limitations, we couldn't have had this success, I think. And what we learned is that we reached new audiences, as we called it, the culture snacker, people who like beautiful things, who are online, on the internet, and don't go to a museum, but they know our collection and know our brand now. We think we reached a deeper level of engagement because people are actually reusing our collection and making new things of it, and it helps us our brand awareness. But it changed our role as a museum because we're not the Ministry of Good Taste now online. It's what the user wants and what the visitor wants. I want to close my speech with a short clip again. It's all about the design competition. The latest edition is on now, and people, if I want to ask you to be creative, until the 15th of January you can send in new designs.
I'm sure many of you have questions, but I'll just kick it off with one question, really. Linda, you ended the presentation by saying that technology, and particularly some of these digital platforms, have helped to democratize art. And I think, for the Citizen Archive, for the Memory Project, there are aspects of that. And in that process, I think we all agree it's a two-way, it's a conversation, so we hear. So I'd just like to ask the panelists, in the things that you've heard as a result of the user-generated content or feedback or projects even, has it changed any of the practices that the museum would have, in a real sense, in terms of, be it how the curators may think, or make certain decisions, or in the case of the archives, has it changed what you think is important to be archived? If you could give some examples of how what you've gleaned from the users and your visitors, the folks that you've engaged, how has that informed some of the things that you've been doing, or in a different way? Any of you? Maybe Eric?
I'll offer one learning, which is trust. I think when we embarked on the process of the Citizen Archivist project, one question that I would say even it occurred to me as well, I suppose, and then colleagues was, can you trust these people who are going to come on board and start transcribing all these manuscripts? Would it be accurate? Would you have mischievous people who would write rubbish, write bad words and so on and so forth? And so at the initial stage, fine, we said, let's kickstart this. We will be a bit more cautious. We would have reviewers to see what happens and what people will do. But, in the end of the day, none of the horror stories or that we had conjured in our own minds happened. And you really have, in our case, thankfully, I suppose, but I've not heard any horror stories from any other memory institution that approaches this in a similar way. Really, the people, if you put the material online, they are interested in it, they come to it willingly, you make it available to them, they will come and they will enrich your collections, open it up, open new vistas, and help you describe and document the impossible numbers of things that museums, libraries, and archives have to go through. So it has been an excellent learning experience of trusting the public out there.
We saw different kinds of things. First, it helps us putting our feet on the ground and to see what people really like, and we have to realize that most of the people really like our Rembrandts and our Vermeers, and we tend to forget that. So that's one thing. Another thing is that people actually help us with our descriptions on our collection database. So people are sharing their ideas if they have extra information, and by giving it away, by making it more easy accessible, your collection, you are stimulating that. And a third thing, I guess, is that it gives us room and ideas for new projects, because by giving it out and in the open, you are open to more ideas, and you get other connections and other initiatives, which, in the end, might benefit your museum as well.
Yeah, I think for cultural organization or institution, the change or the new trends both represents a challenge and an opportunity. I remember maybe around 20 years ago, there was a heat debate on the roles of museums. Some would see museum as a space to not reconstruct a past of something. It is a place with the role to create debates, create topics. Once the topic and the debate appears, people joining in the debate will think about that, which part knowledge is important or what is the meanings of it. Of course, at that time, there are different sides of the arguments. I think nowadays we have new technologies and we have more opportunities to create that kind of communications or debate. But for some cultural institution, to make a change of this role from exhibiting or displaying objective knowledge to creating a new platform mainly for debate, that would be a very challenging mindset change for them.
I'll just move on to a second topic, and actually this shifts it slightly from the people who make up the communities, actually to a community that, as the cultural sector, we seldom engage, which are your engineers, your technology companies. So I would just like to ask the panelists, in the work that you do, how much of it do you actively reach out to that community of folks out there who are creating new programs, who are writing new codes, who are, the Googles? Are these partnerships that you have entered upon, or is it really just a service vendor, a contractor relationship? How have you worked with that community?
We try to partner as much as possible. We've undertaken different projects with Google, for instance, Google Exhibition, Google Arts Institute, but also with other partners who come to us and say, would you like to work together on making a new exhibition or making a new product? Or so we work together with each other, but we give it for free so people can do it ourselves without us too. So that's important to stress. It's not that they have to ask for permission with us. They can't use our brand name, but they can use our collection. And that's completely open, and we want to keep it that way.
I think there's two ways to answer that. Is when doing the memory projects, there's obligations for the projects have to reach out to the communities through some maybe quantitative means. We use survey and ask the audience of the readers what are their perceptions or what kinds of things they can suggest to the projects. So that is a very passive way to contact the community. For the researchers, sometimes when we start the project, we have to involve other peoples, not only professional writers or historians. Sometimes are people old enough, if we do a housing project or project on education, we try to absorb their views and try to conduct a dialogue with them, get some sense of what happens in the past. Of course, there's a limitation. People not long alive enough cannot take part in it. So we are just limited in the oral history practice. I think that's one way to get the community involved.
Eric, did you work with any technology companies?
I think, in terms of, certainly before we went into Citizen Archivist, we did go to certain Google link companies and all that to explore whether it was possible to automatically transcribe the manuscripts. But there were just too many nuances in the writing that it couldn't be achieved. And so I suppose the experience, just to share there, is of course you would have some who look at it as purely a vendor relationship, but I suppose the experience is that when you're working with someone who also believes in culture as such and who believes in the richness of heritage and how it's important to the community, then your product always gets better. And in relation to that, we have in the last 2 years worked with some creatives as well designers to create plates and so on. Something along the lines of what you've done, and something that the museums here do actually very effectively. So, in fact, the archives has just gone into a project where we're using the museum label to bring our products out as well. Yeah. So, and we find that, and when the vendors, so to speak, are engaged with you, you can have that conversation, that collaboration to bring out ideas from both sides and create a much better product.
Just like to open up the floor for questions. The mics are available. Anyone has any questions for our panelists? Great. Just in the middle section. Oh, please do just introduce yourself as well.
Hello, I'm Liz from Liz MacDonald from Art Science Museum in Singapore. I had a question for Linda. I'd like to know how the curatorial team, how the results of this, I would say, marketing and communication campaign had an impact on the exhibition and curatorial team, and if it actually changed their approach to curating exhibitions and opened their minds in other ways to convey content to your audience.
Okay, first of all, let me stress that it's not only a marketing or communications campaign. We've done this from our vision that we should be there for all, and by that it affects our curators too. Yeah, correct what you're stating. For our curators, it's very important that we've done that. They were very afraid in advance, or some of them were very afraid of putting it and giving it all away. But now they've seen what the results are, and that there are people who are very excited about it, and our curators change that too. And now they think it helps us to know what people like. So it helps us giving direction to to their selection process in future projects. But there are still differences, because we have some very talented young curators who are more active users than some others.
Hi, I'm Adrian from the National Archive. I'd just like to ask Linda as well, because I was in Netherlands in October, and it's like an amazing place to be in. And I visited the Institute of Sound and Vision there, and they actually had this exhibition with YouTube. And they actually got the people in to gather, people to work on it, and then they send the video back to them. And I thought it was amazing. And I was wondering, for Rijksmuseum, whether when you put all this up digitally, was there a drop in physical visitorship, that kind of thing, or is there an increase in that physical spaces?
That's a very interesting one. We can't tell it. Exactly, because there are a lot of factors that have influence on your visitor rates. But what we saw is that after the reopening, we had a huge rise of visitors. We got 2.8 million visitors in 2013, and it went down a bit. But we do think that we get more national visitors, as at least of Rijksstudio, because people are attracted to it, and people know us and want to visit us. So we believe it helped us. And in fact, it was although we give everything away for free, it's the best commercial decision we've made, I think.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. The only comparable example I have to the giving away is MIT. At one point, I think in the late 90s or early 2000s, just decided to make all of their curriculum open access. And so my question is really, and they can do that because they're full of cultural capital, as is the Rijksmuseum, it's full of cultural capital. The National Archives Singapore maybe, but certainly that particular colonial collection, is rich with, if you like, the cultural capital of being unique and original. And I'm just wondering whether the gifting, the strategy of gifting and crowdsourcing, depends on that ownership of that cultural capital. And for many museums and galleries in Southeast Asia, Asia, that isn't quite in place in quite the same way. And I'm just wondering, your thoughts on whether that's true. You have to be rich to give.
Yeah, I'm not sure if why we could have done this is because of the we don't owe we don't have the properties, so that's easy, and we saw it as a natural an extension of our daily activities, because we started digitizing our collection 10 years ago, and it was part of our process for scientific purposes, and we need to have the photos for our exhibitions as well. So then we thought, why combine the two and give it away for free? And the idea of sharing was very important to us. And to an extent, you have to be rich to be able to share. I agree on that. And we got some funding for it, but we felt it was our responsibility to do that as a national museum. We're certainly not the first museum to do that, because the British Museum also gave a lot of images for free, but the way we did it is a bit different, but I'm not sure. It might not be possible for other museums. I realize that.
Well, for Singapore, we are hit by two factors. So, putting aside the straight settlement records from the 1800s, where there are no copyright issues, so to speak, we are a young country. So much of the creative products, or even writing, if you will, are still under protection by copyright and other such IP rights. So that's one challenge. The other one is a cultural thing. So as I had the privilege of taking over in this role, I started looking at our donation agreements as well, and I started looking at examples from the US, art books and so on. And they always had an example of giving where the person was willing to say, for example, upon my death, copyright shall pass, right? Traditionally, or it's not so easy to put that into an. Okay, this one I'm just going to make a very broad statement. Please don't block and burn me up on the internet after this. But culturally, certain Asian cultures frown upon such statements, if you will. So it's challenging from that context as well. But what we have done so far is we have put in a new clause which encourages people to allow free use when it is for non-commercial purposes, and we've found that that has been quite effective. So while copyright still exists, insofar as use is for non-commercial purposes, we are allowed to allow that free use. So if somebody a school wants to have an exhibition, or even just a private person wants to have an exhibition and it's not for commercial purposes, we are then allowed to pass on this item for use for exhibition. So that's the in-between way, I think. But that said, we have in the last 2 years managed to insert one contract where we've managed to say, upon my passing, you shall have the rights. So we'll see how we develop there.
Any other questions? Yeah, this one.
Hi, my name is Simone from the Netherlands, Rijksmuseum Academy. I would actually like to reflect on this as well, because I think we're talking about heritage here, so probably any heritage is worth sharing. Of course, Linda's talking about the national heritage in the Netherlands, but also the heritage from the smaller museums, which are more regionally of importance. I guess for those museums, Netherlands speaking, also for the smaller museums, it's very interesting to put out their collections online, because most people, the visitors in the Netherlands, don't know what they have, what they actually can exhibit, or what you can do when you enter that museum. So also for those smaller institutions, it's very lucrative to really put it online and make it accessible.
I think it's more of a mindset. and we had to make that shift too because we weren't there in overnight. So it was a gradual process. It took us many years to come where we are now. But it's not about being afraid of sharing. And if you share, you allow people to see your treasures. And I think I agree with you that it's for all museums. It should be could be a great benefit.
Hi, I'm Kirk Siang from the National Heritage Board. My question is to Eric. Eric, you showed in your slides many different formats like speeches, photographs, old maps, and so on, and converting non-digital media into digital formats for sharing. My question is that the way we produce content and information is changed. A lot of it is now produced in digital formats, blogs, websites, and all that. How is that going to change the way the archives work in terms of selecting content and archiving them for future generations? Because there's also, with that, it's not just the medium that's changed, but also the proliferation of the information. There's so much information out there right now.
First, on the medium, the first opportunity, and let me go that way and not say challenge. The first opportunity is that the archivist certainly needs to, the older ones like myself, certainly need to get a new skill set, get an understanding of the digital world, if you don't already come from that kind of world, and any new archivist that comes on board certainly must know the Born Digital very well in order to both understand whether A, we are able to even take care of that item that we want to archive, and B, if you take it in, do you know how to take care of it and make sure that there's longevity and for posterity, in order to be fit custodians of the items that you take in. So the competency map, as human resource practitioners like to say, has to change significantly across the board. And this applies to every single item, whether it's a map, whether it's a building plan, whether it's a document, an email, and so on. So that's in terms of skill sets. We also then need to build repositories in a different way. I mean, this is related, but are we there yet? For example, National Archives of Singapore, I would say we are 3/4 the way there. We do need to build more systems that can ingest things more easily. The last thing I'll say in terms of the challenges of the too much material, that's where the community comes in again. Whether it's the community in terms of the government departments we have to work with, or the community broadly out there, because we do archive from private sources as well, where there used to be, you could send your important archives to us in 3 boxes. Now it's in terabytes or petabytes and so on. So we don't have the resource, and most national institutions across the world perhaps would not have that resource to be able to identify, appraise every last drop. Right? So I think there was an attempt by, was it Library of Congress or someone to save all of Twitter, for example, at a time, but I understand it failed after a while because there's just so much. All right? So unfortunately or otherwise, a selection has to be made. Someone has to do that. We see it as an iterative process, as a joint appraisal, if you will, where we would have our own sense of what we think is important. I would say this slightly aggressively in the sense that sometimes you have a community out there that says, we say this is the correct thing, but the institutions are part of the community as well. So it's great that we have that conversation, and that between the community out there and the institutions, we come to an agreement on at least a good representative set that showcases, that captures the essence of the functions of an institution, an organization, of a people that we are trying to, whose memories we are trying to capture, and whose milestones we are trying to keep for posterity. So easier said than done, but that's how it has to work. That the community has to be involved as well to document, to describe. I would say gone are the days where the National Archives of Singapore can say, just send me your 10 boxes, I'll just take it. And then now I have 10 boxes there, I have no idea what they are. They look very interesting. I might just put them up, I don't know. But we need the community to at least give me a date or at least a year. You know, if you can't identify everyone, fine, I'll put it up on Citizen Archivist and see what I get. You know, but we do need to work together.
Thank you. Thanks for the interesting panel. It's interesting that you use this term posterity. It seems like a word, you use it very casually, but it seems to me something that's quite difficult to take for granted in a digital age where, irrelevance is death. But I was just wondering, in relation to that, whether to try and bridge this panel with the previous one, whether as archivists here, you guys have seen any instances of cultural extinction, or do you feel that there are any sort of in progress in your hands? And because in the earlier panel, we sort of had the sentiment that it's happening all the time. Thanks.
If I just deal with the posterity first, and pardon me if there's any sense of, but I have great confidence in the people I work with. I say again, I'm a very young archivist, 4 years in the job, but I have great confidence in the people I work with. And therefore, I say with confidence that what we do when we take in something, when we take in the donation, we tell you that we have appraised this and we take it in, we are prepared to take it in, and we will take care of it, we'll migrate it as necessary if it's born digital. And we take great care in keeping up with technology that way. But certainly we also have paper documents and so on and so forth, and we keep them in very good repositories. So from that perspective, the idea is posterity, although we always caveat that I think, and again, most museums and most archives do this, that they do reserve the rights to make decisions at certain points in time. I was just sharing with Kak Siang, in fact, earlier today, where when the archives was much newer in the 1960s and 70s, and our repositories in the 90s were emptier, we took in a bit more aggressively, certain records, for example. But as I look through them now, some of them are human resource records where there are good databases that keep the important information. So we may not need to keep every last piece of paper on every person that has ever worked in a certain institution, for example. So we do have to make decisions from time to time like that. But I think in terms of things that are of historical national importance, posterity is achievable.
I think from the researcher, from historians' point of views, we often do a very little because there are a lot of hidden voice or experience not discovered all the time. Historian or writers just spotlight on some aspect. So there are a lot of things, like for example in Hong Kong, we try to rescue or try to collect more information, in particular experience about boatmen, people doing fishing industries in the past. But it is very difficult. We also know that early Portuguese, Spanish, or Indians are very active communities in the 19th century's Hong Kong, or even in the early 20th centuries. But we seldom get very often to rediscover their activities and experience. So we have all kind of these limitations. We just can deal with some limited perspective. Yeah.
Okay. We maybe have time for one more question.
from the audience?
Thanks. I'm interested in open link data and whether you think that you are interested in connecting your collections to other collections around the world using an open link data framework. Is that an aspiration?
Well, for the National Archives, it's already being done in the background to an extent. Yeah. I think our library colleagues, the National Library colleagues, are far more advanced on that front. I think the only, it's wonderful to be connected. The links are amazing, are great. But the challenge I found with Open Link is that it really does, at the moment at least, take a bit of a human mind to do that link. So A, it is not cheap. Yeah. It is not cheap, and B, it's not cheap because it's labor intensive at the current time. So we are exploring other technologies. We are using, I think it's called Mahout, for example, where the software just goes through your entire collection. It takes a while because we have a huge collection, but it runs through your whole collection. And as I showed earlier, so whenever you go to Archives Online, for example, and you do a search on tiger, whatever it is, you get hits on tigers. But on the right side, take a look on the right side, there will be an offering of related hits, which has been automatically thought through by the Mahout technology to try to draw that link in an automated way.
In your own collection, right? So I'm interested in how you connect your collection to, let's say, the Rijksmuseum.
Well, this is where, well, in a local context, we have a one such platform.
Yeah.
Where the National Archives, the National Library, and the National Heritage Board, we have looked at our data sets. Mm-hmm. We have done the links where necessary. And now if you go to a site called OneSearch, you'll be able to search across all the memory institutions of Singapore. I think the National Gallery Singapore has just come on board last month, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Eugene's not here now, but grateful that in Singapore at least we have come together. But there's no issue with linking up with others as well, potentially. I think the only challenge there I would just say is that because we're coming from such different data sets, and the archives world, we use ISEP-G, it's a certain formulation where series means something, but series for the library may mean something else. So there's a lot of mapping to be done. There's some sacrifice in terms of the depth of the data sets, because you have to just find a common level for certain metadata. So you lose a bit of that, but it's a great way of finding vast quantities across many institutions. And then once you know that institution, you can then go to the specific website and do a deeper dive. That's how I view things.
Okay, thanks. Any for the Hong Kong Memory Project?
Yes, we also encounter a similar questions. But finally, we give up this idea. At the very beginning, we talked to other cultural institutions. Some of them are from a university in United States, because they have some good photo collections, which are focused on China and even early parts of Hong Kong. So we talked to them whether we can exchange or share the data set through already mature technology always used by libraries, federate search. Once more than one data set connected, we can, through the search engine, and then get the metadata together and see. We no need to own the items. We can just jump to the link to that part. But there are some problems here. How to categorize artifacts is, in fact, is a kind of interpretations. That somebody would categorize it as a type 1, and other people would say that it is a different things. So how to name the things even is a problem. So the metadata if we connect that, there's only a very few entries we can connect it, like title or years. Beyond that, we have to say that a lot of information have to be sacrificed or dropped. That's the problem. After considering that's all sort of problems, we give up the ideas.
If I can just last bit of sharing, just jump on that, is that yes, you have to do this, as I shared earlier. First, your metadata sets probably have to be scrubbed down. You'll be not as detailed. Advanced search can be done. Secondly, institutions will have to make sacrifices. So if you go to one search, you will not see a box that says oral history, right? I was mightily upset at one point, but at the end of the day, the idea was to really have one place where those interested in Singapore's heritage and history and culture can go to. And for that larger goal or mission, oral history can be tucked away into audiovisual. We will, storm the world with our oral history in other ways. Yeah, and so there are many platforms in which things go out, and one search where everything is together is just another means of pushing out our content, and that's maybe how we should view it.
Okay. I've just got a reminder from someone at the back that we've got 5 minutes before, and that's what's keeping you from lunch. Just to kick off just to end this, and so that we can continue a conversation over lunch, one question for each of you, which is, what is your institution now working on in the area of defining or engaging your communities? What's the next phase of some of these projects that you have started?
The next phase for us is we're working, we do have a museum app which can be downloaded for free. And we are trying to include this Rijksstudio set, so we're trying to include the collection into this app, so you can walk through the museum and have the digital images as well. So, and it takes a lot of energy for the accessibility of it. So that's the next step of this at this stage.
I left Hong Kong years ago. After that, I'm now focused more on how to understand experience and how to display or redisplay an experience, either through digital means or through performance or other activities.
For the archives, a challenge and a hope, I think. Challenge in the sense that heritage and culture is still a niche area in Singapore, I would say. Perhaps in other parts of the world as well, I don't know. And whenever I'm told, increase your hits in the website by 20% every year, I say, hey, hang on a moment, right? But I mean, I think it's true. It is still a niche area. The question is how to find that something that tipping point. What brings it into a different brings it into everybody's world in an everyday way. And one way we are exploring certainly is having to open up more of our items for designers and creative people to come in and create products to get that mind share out there. And hopefully that will be one type of tipping point that will help us share more of Singapore's history.
Okay, with that now, really thank the panelists for taking the time out and sharing your projects with us, and also to the audience for being so attentive all throughout. Have a good lunch, everyone.
Thank you very much. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause and a big thank you to our moderator as well, Yvonne. Once again, Mr. Eric Chin, Dr. Patrick Mok, Ms. Linda Volkers, as well as Ms. Yvonne Tam, our moderator. Thank you very much.